Good morning, Trish here with Divine Journey Yoga in Tucson, Arizona. I thought today we would do something I like to call back care basics. So we're gonna start out on our back with our legs up over our chair. And we're gonna take a few deep breaths as we settle. So we always settle with a couple of deep breaths and then we move into natural breathing. If you ever need to take a deep breath along the way, feel free to add those in. And we want to also add a little bit of length to the exhale. And we can practice what we've done before, which is the relaxation breath. You breathe in a natural breath, and you breathe out a natural breath, and then you count 1001, 1002, and then you breathe in again and out again. So that you're counting to 2 or 3 or 4 at the end of that exhale, just allowing the breath to simply end on its own. And this is one of the key ingredients for our low back health, our relaxation. I know many of us hold a lot of tension in our neck, our shoulders, and our low back. So today we'll work on a little bit of that. And we're just gonna lie here and breathe, probably taking about 10 deep breaths, or 10 actually natural breaths. As you're breathing, just tuning into the sounds around you. Noticing how you're feeling physically, mentally, emotionally, and just keep breathing. Let's just take 2 more breaths. And then wiggling your fingers, maybe take your arms and stretch them along the top of your mat. Reaching up as you tip your tailbone a little bit and arch the back slightly as you breathe into those ribs. Get that big stretch and then allow the arms to float down and draw the knees into the chest. And maybe you just put your feet on your chair or just pull those knees all the way in. We're gonna hold these knees in for several breaths and feel free to rock while we do this. So first we relaxed the low back. Now we're gonna open it up a little bit, softening it, warming it, letting it stretch. You can keep practicing that relaxation breath throughout the practice today. Make sure you can feel your toes, just wiggle them a little bit. Maybe flop the feet, point and flex. Let's take a few more breaths so that you really start to feel that compression in the hips and the opening across the low back. And then gently let the feet slide back onto your chair, your couch, whatever you're using. And we'll move into a little bit of yoga sit-ups. So this is what we like to do. I just take one hand to one shoulder and the other hand to the other shoulder, crossing my wrists on my chest. And I'm going to take a deep breath in, and on the exhale, I'm just going to lift my head and shoulders and then roll to the left. Keep exhaling until you're ready to lay back and inhale. We're going to take that whole exhale to lift up and roll to the right shoulder and back all the way out with the exhale and down to the flat back for the inhale. Exhaling, lifting up and then rolling to the left, to the center and back down. Inhale on your back, exhale to lift and roll. And we're just going to do this probably 2 or 3 more times on our own. Remember, you're inhaling when you're resting, exhaling when you're moving and rocking. And of course, if you get tired and prefer to be finished, then you can rest. You can pull your knees back in, do whatever you like. Letting yourself come back to the floor when you're finished, opening those arms out wide like wings and reaching out through the palms, maybe lifting the inner arms slightly upward as you stretch and just swing the arms a little bit. Maybe roll the wrists as you bring the hands straight up into the air. And then slide the feet off of the chair, pull those knees back in, give yourself a big hug. And I want to just push the chair out of the way or kind of inchworm your way up to the top of your mat so that you can stretch your legs out. And as we stretch those legs out, just feeling that stretch, maybe adding the arms over the head, pull the belly in. Let the ribs arch a little and float the hands back down by your side, bending the knees, planting the feet. We're going to move into pelvic tilts. So first we flatten that low back and kind of flatten the belly down as you exhale. And then as you're ready to inhale, you're going to rock the tailbone, arch the low back, let the belly poof up a little bit. And then exhale to flatten. And we're just going to do 3 or 4 of those on your own pace with your own breath. And we're gonna end with our backs nice and flat against the floor. Not a lot of air underneath there. Just take a moment, keeping the back flat, breathing naturally. Maybe lift your toes a few times, just kind of toe tap the floor, and then maybe come up onto the toes, lift the heels, keep that low back nice and flat. And then let your feet come to a comfortable position for your bridge pose. Arms are down by your sides, palms flat. Curl those shoulder blades back and under, and re-flatten the back so it gets really flat against the mat. Take a deep breath in, and on your exhale, lift the entire back up off the floor as one piece and stretch through those quads. Take a breath in on the lift, and exhale to set the entire back down flat again. Okay, so there's no rolling here. We're taking a breath in, and then exhaling, lifting the flat back up, taking a breath in, exhaling, laying the back flat down. And just do this on your own. Feel free to get creative. If it works better for you to roll your back, you can enjoy that. This is just a little safer for the low back, the lumbar spine, if it's already kind of stressed. Keeping it flat really engages the muscles of support. Just up and down a few times. Of course, you can stay and hold it up if you feel good there. You can stay for a couple of breaths, always moving on the exhale. And of course, when you've had enough, you'll pull those knees back into your chest and give yourself another squeeze and a rock. Just take your time. If you wish you could do more bridge poses, always go back and do more. That's important to listen to our body and let it feel strong. After you've squeezed your knees in, we're going to just slowly let those feet come down to the floor. We're going to do 3 different kinds of twists. So we'll start with our feet on the floor a little wider apart. Maybe the pinky toes are falling off the edges of the mat as we rock side to side. And the lumbar spine is really what's rocking here. And the hips, the shoulders, and the mid-back are pretty flat on the floor, and the arms are wherever they want to be. This is a really simple twist. It's fairly gentle, especially if you don't go all the way down. Always feel free to come back to this twist. And then coming back to center, we can lift the knees, taking the feet off the floor, bringing the knees to about a 90-degree angle or maybe a little tighter into the chest, and rock the knees side to side again. With the knees together, the thighs together. You can even slide a block between the legs if that feels good for your hips. And we're not going all the way to the floor, but we are hovering for just a beat of the heart on each side. We're just breathing naturally, normally, not really worrying about where the exhale or the inhale is. Nose pointing straight up in the air. You can add a little bit to this by turning your palms down, maybe spreading your arms a little wider than your hips. And then see if you want to rock over to one side and kind of hover a little closer to the floor. See how that feels in your low back. Feels like a pretty good twist. And then rock to the other side and hover as you almost touch the floor, but don't quite get there. And come on back. Good. Feel free to do that a couple more times if you really liked it. If it felt a little bit risky for you, then come right back to center, hold those knees into the chest, and just breathe. And we're all going to end up there together now, wrapping our hands around our shins. Squeeze those knees in, lift the tailbone off the floor a little bit. And then let's push our feet up in the air just for a minute. Point and flex the feet so that we get a little bit of movement and straightening in the knees before we finish with our final twist. We're going to float the feet back down to the floor. And this time we're going to scoot our hips over. So I like to push into my feet as I just scoot my hips almost all the way to the right edge of the mat. My shoulders are going to stay in the middle of the mat. Then I take the knees, zip them up, and roll them over away from the side that I scooted towards. So I'm going to rock to the left, my hips are to the right. And what happened is we kind of realigned our spine. Since we scooted it over, when we twisted, the hips rolled back to the center. So hopefully that feels okay. Sometimes people like to put a block or something between their legs to help kind of release that top hip. And you can also spread the arms out and take 2 deep breaths. Your head can go anywhere you like. And we'll all move together by taking a deep breath in and then exhaling, bringing the knees back to center. We move on the exhale. And we're going to plant the feet and scoot the hips all the way to the left edge of the mat. Zip up the knees and the thighs as we rock the knees to the right this time. And feel free to kind of keep adjusting those hips so that you feel nice, long length from the crown of your head down to your tailbone. Nice deep alignment there. Spreading the arms and taking deep breaths. Taking a deep breath in, we're going to move back to center on the exhale and scoot those hips back to center and pull the knees in one more time. Squeeze them in, gently rock a little bit. We are going to roll over onto our side, take a moment, maybe a breath, and then slowly push up. And we're going to come right onto hands and knees. And I want to encourage you to use a blanket under your knees. We're going to be standing on our knees in a minute, but for now, I just want to have hands and knees, and this is a good place to test out your knees this morning, see how they feel. If you ever feel like your knees do not want you to have them on the floor, then you're going to come to a table or a bed and be standing with your hands on that support. A chair is good too. We're just going to rock the spine. So you can do yoga without being on your knees at any time. Rocking and stretching. I have my toes curled under just because sometimes I like to sink my hips back and get that little toe stretch, but that's not important. If you want to keep your feet flat, that's fine. Rounding and flexing just 2 more times. Nice. And we'll come down to our elbows for a minute and just open and close the hands, twist the wrists. We want to make sure and take good care of these beautiful joints that we use all the time, our wrists and our hands. And then you can always stay down on your elbows if that helps protect your wrists, or come back to a wide spread palms, fingers spread out. I'm going to kind of lean into my left knee and start to stretch my right leg out. First, I'm just pushing my toes back along the length of my mat and maybe rocking a little. And then I'm going to lift the leg just to the height of the hip. Try not to let it get too high. We want it to be nice and flat across the back. And I lift through the shoulders, reach through the crown of the head, and breathe. Just feeling the weight of that leg in my low back. Pull the low belly in to support the lumbar spine. Good. Just gazing straight down at your mat below your nose. As you start to get tired, you'll notice your standing knee that you're leaning on is connecting up into that hip and it's getting tired. Take another deep breath. And slowly let that knee come back down. And we'll try the other the other leg and knee together. So you reach, pressing down that length of the mat, then lifting the leg. And you feel that length from the heel of that foot behind you. Let that foot be flat. And then reach up along the length of the neck, out through the crown of the head. So you have this long line of energy. And draw the low belly in, but keep breathing steadily. We're waiting for that little bit of tiredness in the standing knee. One more breath. Bringing that knee down. We can widen the knees apart, bring the big toes together and sink into child's pose, or simply come down onto your elbows in a puppy dog pose. Anything that you can do to just give those wrists a break and stretch out the back a little bit. Breathing into the belly. And now we're going to do the arms. We're going to come right back up to that position of table pose. Bring the knees right back under the hips. That usually means there's about the distance of a fist between those legs, those knees on the floor. And I'm just going to keep my knees right where they are. I might curl my toes under for fun. I'm going to reach forward with my right arm and just pull the shoulder down the back. Lock it into the socket and breathe here. And you can feel how the weight has shifted in the core. I have to kind of pull to one side, but we want to center our weight and try to let the body manage the weight of this arm, and take another breath. And you can place the palm down, lean into that hand and reach forward with the other hand. And the hand might be flat with the thumb pointing up, or it might be just reaching forward. It's okay. Anything you can do with the hand is welcome. And then just draw that shoulder blade back and down the spine. Keep the low belly in. Maybe 2 more breaths. And we bring the hand down and we'll come all the way back down to our elbows. Feel free to widen the knees again for your child's pose, big toes together as a resting point. Anything that feels right for you. Twist out those wrists. And we're going to add both arm and leg together. But remember, you can feel free to just do one or the other, following your own preference this morning. It's a very important part of yoga for me, that we have our own individual preferences and practices that most benefit us. Bringing yourself back to table pose, remembering that if your knees have had enough, you could be standing at a table or a couch or a chair instead of on your knees. I'm going to reach back with my right leg, slide it back, then lift it up, and then add the opposite arm in front. Or maybe I just come up onto my fingertips. And I can feel that length from shoulder to hip, out through the leg. Maybe I'm going to flatten the arm, flatten the hand with the thumb toward the sky. And just wait as you feel the density of these limbs kind of holding. You can feel the weight being held in the center of the body. Draw that low belly in. Keep breathing until you find that you're ready to come down. And that wobbling that you feel is a really important part of this pose. It's working all those beautiful muscles and tendons that help us find good posture and balance in our daily lives. I'm going to come down and relax. I'm going to come down to my elbows for a moment. Feel free to take that child's pose again. I really want to give that wrist a little break and twist, so I've got lots of lubrication in the joint. And then back to table for the last piece of this, which is stretching out with the other leg, lifting it up. Neck is long, shoulders slide down the spine, and the other arm, opposite of that back foot, reaches forward. And we breathe. And just feel the body as it's generating energy and prana, life force, feeling the wobble. Noticing when you're getting tired and giving yourself a break when you need to. Bring those hands down. This time as I bring my knee back, I'm going to crawl my knees slightly forward and maybe get the front of my ankle right over the back fold of my blanket, and I'm going to sit back on my heels. And you don't have to do this if it's better for your knees. You could come to a seated position. We're just going to twist the wrists. I want to recommend a little squeeze in the knees though. These joints, when we squeeze them, it's like we're squishing out all that old energy, getting some new stuff in. Let's just take a few cat-cow rocks with our chest. Deep breaths. I want to move into our Knight's Kneel, which is really good stretch for the quad, and I'm going to use blocks for this. So I'm going to slowly come up to a tall kneel, kind of crawl my knees back a little bit so I've got lots of support. I'm on my blanket still. I'm just going to bring one foot forward. And I want there to be lots of 90-degree angles here. So I want a 90-degree angle here from my knee down right over the ankle. And then I want that same 90-degree here at the hip and in that bottom leg. So mine is slightly on a diagonal. So I'm going to scoot the front foot back a little so that I get really tall with this under leg. One of the other things we can adjust is our back toe. Mine is kind of swishing to one side. I want to line it up in line with my ankle and my knee, okay? And I've got both of my blocks stacked up on the other side. I don't know if you can see this. And it feels pretty stable so that I have some support to be sitting up this high. You could also be right beside a chair or a couch, something like that. And I really want to focus on getting taller and taller as I press down through that back knee, the one that I'm standing on. And this front knee stays really stable as I just lift the heart. I don't want to get too much of a sway back here in the lumbar spine, so I'm going to pull the low belly in, and you should really feel this in this standing thigh. I'm just going to take one hand forward. You can keep your other hand on the block. I'm going to take the hand that corresponds with that right, with the front knee, and lift it all the way up. Take a deep breath. If you're okay to let go of those blocks, you can bring the other arm up. Keep breathing. Feel the pressure as you press down into the floor with the top of your foot behind you and the sole of your foot in front of you. Feel the squeezing and the tensing in the muscles. You're getting stronger. And just one more breath. Bringing the arms down first and then starting to lean forward. Maybe just hands on the blocks as we bring the front knee back and maybe stretch it out behind and then bring it down. We're going to right away bring that other knee forward and get it off the floor so we're off that weight. And again, I want 90-degree angles here. Really nice sharp corners on these knees. And that under knee, I want to make sure that my hips are right over it. And if that doesn't feel good to you, I want to encourage you to stand up, not worry about that back knee so much. You can have an alternate pose there. You could come into a long lunge, something like that. And I'm just pressing down into the knee, pressing into that front foot, adding one arm at a time, feeling the balance, and taking about 3 deep breaths. You can float the hands down as you hinge at the hips, and we are going to go ahead and stand up. So I'm going to curl the back toe under, lift that knee, get a nice flat back, and slowly step the back foot in, using those blocks to help support yourself as you come forward into a nice deep knee bend. Maybe the forearms are resting on the knees or the thighs. Tailbone sticking up and back behind you, and then the hands come to the thighs. The back is still flat, and we slowly rise up. And just swing those hips a little bit side to side. We can move the blanket off of the mat there, and this, we're going to use our chair again. So I'm going to place it right at the end of my mat for now. And I'm going to stand with my feet just a little wider than my hips and swing those hips side to side, just feeling that stretch. I want to add the arms maybe just out to the height of the shoulders or all the way up, swinging, and you might start to stretch the side body, but you want to keep the low belly pulled in, nice and strong. Good. And the first thing we'll do is just come right back down to mountain pose and stretch out our neck a little bit. So we're gonna drop the chin toward the chest wall and maybe take your hands and kind of run them down the sides of your neck, letting some of that tension go. Good. And then let the chin come back to level with the floor and just turn the chin toward one shoulder. See how that feels as you stretch these little tendons across the side of the neck. See if you want to tip the chin toward the shoulder, not much, adding a little bit. And then lifting back to a level position with the chin, turning the neck forward. And we're moving in slow motion here, and you can feel those little tiny cricks and cracks. Some people like those noises, I do not. Once your chin is over toward the other shoulder, try not to lift it up. Try to keep those shoulders soft and let the chin dip slightly. Very nice. And then back to a level chin, bring it back to center. Good. And with the chin facing forward, we're just gonna dip the shoulder, the ear toward one shoulder, and the other arm can swing out a little bit, and it can move forward and back just a little. Maybe some little circles, just getting into all those little tiny parts of the neck, and you can drop the chin a little more. We're just kind of massaging here. Good. And then bring the arm back, bring the head back up, and then tip to the other shoulder. And you can swing the arm just gently. We're just doing exploratory movement with the shoulder, seeing how it affects the neck. And you can take little notes like, does your head want to stick forward? Can you bring it back in line with the spine? All those things are observations, no need to judge them. And come on back to center, good. And just roll those arms wide, roll the elbows around, good. And let's start to widen our feet apart as we move our shoulders and our arms. And I'm gonna take the toes that are near the chair and just turn them so that they point under the chair. And it might be that my foot is under it, might be a little bit ahead of that chair. I'm gonna move into my triangle pose here. So I'm gonna start by bending the knee right next to the chair, and I might even bump the chair with my knee a little bit. And then I'm gonna take my torso, which is upright, and let it lean on a diagonal, and then maybe plant my hand on the chair. And then my other hand is on the hip. I straighten out the bent knee. And this is triangle pose, one of my favorite ways to use the chair. And we're just gonna breathe here. Feel free to kind of swing your hips a little bit, just feeling the bones settling into that socket. I mean this femur bone here on that front leg. And if you wanna go deeper, you can slide your hand, and that will be really a function of what's going on in your side body this morning. And of course your core is doing its job, pulling that low belly in, feeling that tight, strong girdle there. And we'll just take 2 more breaths. And you can add the top arm. And the top hand will come down, and we'll re-bend the knee and maybe even put our hand on the thigh as we press back up to tall, right shoulders over the hips. Straighten out the knee and turn the toes forward. Good. I'm gonna step my feet together, heel toe them together, and maybe move my chair to the other end or turn around. I don't want to put my back to you, so I'm gonna just put my chair down the other end of my mat and then step out wide again. I'm gonna maybe even rolling those shoulders again, making sure we've got nice warmth in those shoulder sockets. When the legs are wide enough, turn the toes toward the chair. And then we bend into that knee so that we can touch the chair, and we lean sideways on this diagonal, the beautiful line of diagonal from like the nose down through the center of the chest, down and out to the back foot. And you might kick the heel back a little bit as you straighten out the front knee, and you might just can't keep the fingers on the chair, hanging out and breathing. This position, this supported position, really allows this pose to be a stretch more than a strenuous kind of stressful position, and I really like that change. And of course, you don't have to use the chair at all. You can add the upper arm and take 2 more breaths. Lowering that hand and bending the knee, pressing up, straightening out, turning the toes forward, and coming back to standing. Good. And I'm just gonna keep switching the chair from side to side. You can just simply turn around, of course. So we're just gonna keep building on these poses. Stepping wide, make sure you can roll those shoulders a few times, keeping the chest open and happy, shoulders warm. Okay, so I'm gonna turn my toes back toward the chair, bend into the knee, put my hand on the chair, and then I might actually take this front foot and kind of step it back just a little bit so that I have a little bit more ability to put all my weight into this bent knee. We're moving into half moon pose. So I'm gonna maybe even walk my hand further down the chair as I bend and lean into this standing knee, this bent knee, maybe starting to straighten it as the back leg floats off the floor. I love having a chair here, otherwise I would fall over. Sometimes it feels good to put the elbow on the chair. I'm really gripping around the back of the chair. You can grip the sides. And you don't have to have the leg very high behind you, but the hips are open and you can be back and forth, bending and lifting. Ooh, that's a lot of work. In the knees, we're just gonna take one more breath. You can add the arm if you'd like. And bend that knee again. Bring the back foot down and slowly rise up. Wow. That's a full body pose for you. We're gonna go ahead and switch the chair to the other side. One of the keys to our half moon pose is having something behind us as well. So if there's a way for you to do that, a cabinet, a door, anything, a table, sometimes that's helpful. But we want to keep our body nice and open here. So as the toes come toward the chair, bending the knee, planting the hand on the chair, and then maybe stepping that foot in a little so we get lots of weight on that standing leg, knee bent. Starting to lean forward. You can have the hand forward at first, this other hand as you come up, and then take it to your hip, because you want, this is why the wall is so great, you want to be able to open across the hips. And this in and out of the pose is so important. And some people will get really frustrated because they're coming in and out of the pose so many times, but think of all the muscles you use to do that transition. And see if your knees are okay with that. Open those hips. Add the arm if you like, and take one more breath. Feel that wobble? Bend the knee and come on down and let go of the chair. Good. Turn those toes forward and swing those hips. Very nice. All right. Now for this next pose, you could sit on the chair as an alternative. So I'm actually just gonna put the chair right behind me and step my feet wide apart. We're gonna do warrior two. And sometimes it does feel good to be sitting for warrior two. So if you want to, you can, and I'll do that for 1 or 2 breaths in a moment just to show you. So first our legs go nice and wide and we turn one of our toes out, bend into the knee, and we're going to keep our torso nice and tall, shoulders over hips as the arms reach out nice and wide. Now if you wanted to, you could just sit down on that chair and the feet might get a little wider. You might push a little through the soles of the feet, really feel the opening across the chest. And as you kind of roll your shoulders back, let your belly draw in and up. And whether you're standing or sitting, this pose reaches into every part of the body. You can feel free and look out over those fingertips pointing toward that bent knee. And breathe. And we're gonna move right into our extended side angle. So we're gonna lean to the side toward that bent knee, bring the forearm down, the other hand might come up. If you're sitting in a chair, I wanna encourage you to reach back behind you and touch the back of the chair, stretching through the front of the chest. If you're standing, no worries. Leave the arm up or stretch it over. Any of these things are options. And this hand that's kind of sticking out in front of us, let's make a mudra there. Anything you'd like. Bring any finger to the thumb and breathe. When you're getting tired, you'll know, just bring that arm down. Release that mudra. Slowly come back up and straighten the knee. Turn the toes. If you're sitting, just go ahead and come back to center. If you're standing, your feet are coming back together.
And just rocking, good. If you're sitting, go ahead and stand for a moment. And just swing those hips, kind of feel the difference in your legs here, because we've opened one side a little more than the other. Yep. And then we'll start to set up for the other side, going nice and wide. With those feet, turning the other toes out, bending into that knee, maybe scooting back a little so that you can sit on the front edge of your chair. Really roll outward into the outer edge of the back foot and then push into the sole of the foot connected to that front knee, and then lift those arms. Feel the spreading out of the body here, and let the belly draw in to support the core. At first, let your fingers spread out wide like starfish, and then zip the fingers up together. And feel how that energy focuses as you breathe. Feel the neck, turning the head toward the fingers or keeping your face forward. We're very slowly going to transition into that extended side angle by starting to bend the front arm and bring the forearm down to the thigh. The other arm lifts up behind. If you're sitting, you might reach back for the back of your chair to get that extra stretch through the front side of the ribs. Or you're over with your arm and the fingers on the hand sticking out in front of you, maybe roll upward and you find a fingertip with your thumb, and breathe. And when you feel ready, you're slowly floating the arm down, pressing into that thigh and coming up. Slowly straightening the knee if you're standing. If you're seated, you're just going to start to bend both knees and bring them forward and rock a little here. Very nice. So as our standing balance today, I want to work on a little bit of unrounding the back. So I'm going to go ahead and stand up and set my chair off to the side. If I want to use it for Savasana, I might keep it close by. That's one of my favorite ways to relax at the end of class, just like we started. I'm going to swing my hips a few times and just kind of explain the next pose. We're going to come into Cactus Arms with the elbows about the height of the shoulders, and you can feel the shoulder blades squeeze together here, okay? I recommend coming to a wall, a door, anything where you can bring the back of your head against a support. Good. And that low back might sway a little bit, so step the feet forward just a tiny bit so you can get pretty flat in the back, just gentle curves. And we're gonna breathe here. This pose specifically helps the upper back to come out of that rounding shape that we so often fall into when we sit so much. So just keep breathing. It should feel kind of hard. And we're just gonna take 2 or 3 more breaths, leaning back into that wall. Feeling those shoulder blades doing their work. And as you get really tired, just let the arms melt down. Good. Step slightly away from the wall. Bend your knees and come down into your forward fold. Sticking your tailbone out. You can keep your hands on your thighs and kind of relax the back. Or maybe bring the elbows, the forearms to the thighs. Let it stretch through the long spine here, out through the top of the head, out through the tailbone. One more deep breath. We're going to slowly make our way down. So I'm just going to step my hands forward. I'd like to take a down dog. Feel free to just come right into table pose. Anything else that feels good to you, a plank pose, something good. Stretching it out. Maybe cat-cows. We're going to find our way into our child's pose, and that might mean that you roll onto your back right now and pull those knees back into the chest, and we will be going there soon. We're heading there now. We're just going to take this long spinal stretch before we roll back on our backs. See if there's somewhere you can soften just for one more breath. And then lifting the head, Walking the hands in, we're just gonna swing the knees around. And if you have osteoporosis or something like that, then you're gonna wanna lie down on your side first. Reach for your strap as you go. And then roll those knees up, coming onto your back again. Nice work. All right, let's just lay flat for a minute. Maybe the knees are bent or the legs are stretched out. We just wanna let that low back decompress. It was just doing lots of good work. See how it feels. See if your heart is beating. A little bit of gratitude for being alive today. And we'll just slowly open up our strap. Start to bring that right knee into the chest as we wrap the strap around the sole of the right foot, more around the ball of the foot, just to use those muscles to help keep that foot safe. And at first the knee is really bent and the foot is flat toward the sky and the other knee is bent too. And then we'll make some choices, individual choices. You might keep the knee bent that's connected to the foot on the floor, or you might stretch that leg out. You might let the leg just rest softly on the ground, or you might let it hover. Just all your own choices here. And I'm gonna keep my knee pretty bent here with the strap in the air. If you want to, you can start to unbend it, but it might need to go further away from your head. Whichever works for you. We're gonna take 5 deep breaths. As you come to the end of that breath, just kind of soften the leg in the strap as you bring the other leg slowly up into the strap, and we'll switch feet. This first foot is going to float back down, and we'll make that choice again, either to keep that knee bent or to stretch the leg out. Just moving into your hamstring stretch for 5 deep breaths. Slowly bringing that long leg that's on the floor up into the strap again. And we're gonna switch into a figure 4 stretch here. And you don't have to use the strap. And I recommend making the strap a little longer for this next position. I'm gonna keep my second leg, that right leg that I started in the strap with, I'm gonna keep it in the strap again. Bending my left knee, I'm gonna slide the ankle of my left leg down the right leg until I come down below the knee. It's really above the knee if we're standing, right? It's on the thigh. We're in our figure 4 shape here. And I might see what happens if I draw that strap in, maybe wrap my hands around. You should be feeling a pretty deep stretch, of course, up the back. You can keep the knee bent a little, up the back of the strap leg, and then down into this outer glute of the bent knee. And you can gently press that knee away. You can have lots of fun here. You can, of course, also just take the foot out of the strap, let it come to the floor, and have the ankle crossed over the thigh in our more traditional figure 4 shape. But this is fun. If it's fun, then you can stay here and rock a little bit. Take a few deep breaths. And when you feel ready, you're just gonna stretch that leg back up into the strap. Now my left leg is up in the strap, my right ankle is sliding down, coming into a cross at the thigh. And then maybe the strap needs to get longer, or it can pull in a little, and maybe rock a little and breathe. If you ever run into a shape that really does not suit you, give yourself the permission to change it, to come out of it, and to skip it altogether. It's so important to stay out of stress in our yoga practice. Otherwise, we are kind of counteracting the work that we're doing here if we're stressed out. Let's just take one more breath and then slide the leg back up into the strap again.
I'm gonna leave my feet in the air with a little bend in the knees and take the strap off. And I'm just gonna shake my legs a little, just kind of flopping my feet, shaking the legs, letting the arms just rest. I can feel where I was holding onto those straps, maybe moving the hands a little bit here, just kicking in the air. And then I'm gonna pull my right knee into the chest, reach up through my left leg as I inhale, and lower the left leg on the exhale. And I might let the leg hover for a couple breaths, or I might go straight into relaxing the long leg on the mat. It's really up to you. This is traditionally called wind relieving pose. We always start on the right side because our intestine starts on the right and we can get some bubbles out sometimes. But also this pose is very stabilizing for that sacrum. So good for the low back. Take another big breath. And on the exhale, start to lift that long leg back up into the sky and pull it into your chest. Good. On the inhale, let the other leg lift up. And then slowly exhale that long leg to the floor. Now we're holding the left knee in, the right leg is stretched out. Nose points upward and we breathe. Deep breath in, and on the exhale, lift the long leg all the way up and squeeze it into the chest. Good. And we're kind of right back where we started with our knees squeezed into the chest. Let's do our twists one more time, and maybe a little different variation of one of them. So I'm going to float my legs down nice and wide out toward those edges of the mat and gently rock the knees, letting the thighs stretch, not going too far. Just enjoying the motion. Maybe you can remember what it felt like to do this towards the beginning of class and see if it feels different. Sometimes I just feel warmer and a little more loose. Sometimes I can't tell at all. Good. And then as a variation, I'm going to walk my feet together, scoot my hips a little bit to the right, maybe 2 inches, and then I'm going to roll onto my left side. So I've kind of centered myself on my mat. My hips are stacked, my knees are stacked. You can put your blanket under your head or anything you like that. And I'm just gonna take my top arm up and lay it down behind me, way back behind me. And I'm gonna breathe here, inhaling and exhaling. Now some people really like to just stay in this position and let the body slowly soften. The top knee often will rise a little bit. Or some people really love to exhale as the arm comes forward. Inhale as they reach back again, going back and forth several times. This is a very gentle squeezing and wringing out of the spine. Sometimes it feels really good, and sometimes we know that we just want to be still. So follow your intuition there. And the next time the arm comes forward, we're just gonna roll ourselves over onto our back and scoot the hips the other way, roll onto the other side. And maybe the top arm comes back and rests for several breaths, or we move inhaling as we reach back and exhaling as we come forward. And this time with the arms wide, you can roll the knees back up to center, and you can really choose anything else you'd like to do with your practice for the next couple of minutes as you make yourself ready for your Savasana. Lots of things to do. You might slide a block under your hips and put your legs up in the air. You might crawl over to a wall. You might just sit up for a minute and bring that chair in so that you can put your legs back over it. That's my favorite. Some people call this position something like yoga Maui or something like that, total relaxation, life on the beach. something wonderful like that. Just letting the body rest. We have about 5 minutes here to just unwind and let go. Coming back inside your body, noticing the breath. Practicing that relaxation technique of breathing in and out naturally and then counting to 2 at the end of that exhale, or maybe 3 or 4, and then breathing again. Feel free to take a deep breath now and then a little deeper, a little wider breath if you need to. If there's any little movements you need to make to help yourself feel even more comfortable, I encourage you to do that. Sometimes thoughts will pop into our head and we can follow those intuitions and find a little more deeper comfort. As you're breathing, just let the sounds in the room around you come into your ears and slide away. When your thoughts start to float into making plans and worrying about your day, bring them back to your breath. Remind yourself that you'll have time to think about those things in about 2 more minutes. Try to really let the mind focus on the breath. That single pointed focus helps to quiet the brain. We just want to watch the traffic go by, not worrying about how heavy it is or what kind of thoughts we're having, just letting it all go by. Take a couple more really deep breaths, filling your ribs up, feeling them arch a little bit, and then letting them settle. Beginning to move your fingers and your toes. You might stretch the arms along the top of your mat, and then let them come down as you bring your feet inward. Maybe the knees come toward the chest and you rock a little bit. Taking your time to roll over. Just kind of noticing your back as you come into your seated position. Just see how you feel. Sitting in any comfortable way for you. And we end with either our hands in our lap or hands together at our heart as we just bow to the gratitude for this time together. Namaste.